Well, hello then, I do hope you're all well, and I do hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Now here we have our top 10 really stupid, brazen, mad Mogg Rants. And I always like to, how on earth did we get here when our Jacob Rees-Mogg is allowed anywhere near front bench politics, let alone allowed through the doors of the House of Commons?
Mr. Speaker, doesn't this mean that his botched Brexit deal has meant more and more civil servants doing border checks for goods, trade deals for that the EU would have done better and more profitably for the UK, making up new environmental and farming laws for the sake of it, when we can't even pick our own fruit and butcher our own meat, only to see thousands of civil servants now being sacked so that it takes 12 weeks to get a passport or a driving licence. So this massive further cut in civil servants will lead to more service delays, more pain from less public service. When what we should be having is him taking a lead from his Prime Minister so he can resign and leave so a better administration can be put in place to run this country.
I better know what I was going to say. As I totally agree, I now resign.
Mr. Speaker, there is a general rule in public life that whatever the honourable member for Swansea West says, it's likely to be wrong. Unfortunately, in that question he started by saying we'd taken on too many civil servants and then ended by saying that we didn't have enough. So even with his own question, he was in a deep state of confusion. The result of Brexit is that we are free to make our own way, to make our own rules, to be able to diverge from the European Union. That is fundamental. And fascinatingly, it's a freedom that people voted for, including the people of Wales, who he tries to represent in this House. What we need to do is to be efficient and spend taxpayers' money wisely, but the socialist confusion always wants to get it wrong.
Passport delays, driving licence delays, benefit delays, visa delays. Which bit of backlog Britain is he going to break further in order to slash the civil service? And does he agree with me that the civil service did not cause the financial crisis? The civil service is not causing inflation. The civil service responded magnificently to COVID and is now covering for a Conservative party too intent on squabbling internally to deliver competent government.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to give the credit for the financial crisis to Gordon Brown, formerly of this place, which is, I think, indeed the famous seller of the gold at a bargain basement price. But the Honourable Lady is confusing two different things. There haven't been reductions in the Passport Office. These are proposed reductions. What is going on is that too many people are still working from home. We need to get people back in the office doing their jobs, but we can also do more with fewer people. We see this already with DVLA. If you apply for things with DVLA online, they are mainly being returned extremely quickly. There is great efficiency saving to be had by using better technology and turning things around effectively and speedily.
Shadow Minister.
You makes you wonder how on earth this man is in politics. Oh, God.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, while Tory leadership hopefuls fight over who can be the most economically incompetent to win their members' favour, the UK's public services are at breaking point. The Passport Office, DVLA, courts, HMRC, all struggling with huge delays. The public's crying out for the government to act, and what do we get? A proposal to slash vital civil servants' jobs that will only exacerbate problems, not fix backlogs, and they couldn't be more out of touch with the priorities of communities across the country. So I ask the Minister, how can the public trust a Tory government, mired in disarray and division, governed by self-interest rather than public duty, to deliver much-needed high-quality public services?
Mr. Speaker, what we are trying to do is to get back from the COVID backlog. That it is undoubtedly the question, the fact, that because people have not been going into their offices, if you take DVLA, the mail wasn't being opened. It was piled up in room after room because people weren't going in. And now 4 million envelopes unopened because people weren't going into the office. Now, that was a combination of the requirements of COVID, but also the excessive rules of the socialist Welsh government that made it very difficult for people to go in. So this backlog has to be dealt with, but technology is unquestionably the answer. Things that you do online, try renewing your tax disc, Mr. Speaker, with DVLA. You can do it in seconds. You no longer have to go into a post office to do it. This is the type of efficiency we need.
Can I just...
Mr. Speaker, and as a civil engineer, I must say that I was never an enthusiastic supporter of HS2. The cost-benefit analysis of the project was never completely clear to me, and one thing I do know as a civil engineer is that project creep, and therefore its related costs, is a very real thing. We do know that in March the Transport Secretary announced 1.7 billion of potential future cost pressures, and that was in March. So what steps is his department taking to ensure that cost pressures are managed preemptively rather than reacted to? Thank you.
Yes, well, my honourable friend is very wise to raise these important points because taxpayers' money must always be dealt with carefully. So the Department of Transport is closely monitoring the rate of increase of potential contingency spend on HS2, together with any opportunities to realise cost savings through the monthly ministerial task force meetings. The £1.7 billion of potential future cost pressures reported in March are...
No disrespect, but I'm just looking at Kit Malthouse. Clearly he's thinking about lunch.
Manageable within the Phase 1 target cost of £40.3 billion, given the level of remaining contingency, and noting this represents less than 4% of the overall budget.
Listed Beckham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We need to cut the cost of the state, and we need to ensure that government departments spend our money, taxpayers' money, in a prudent and commercial way. Will my right honourable friend undertake to conduct a review of all major government projects to ensure that we are doing that?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am in entire agreement with my honourable friend, and it is so important that with the Infrastructure and Projects Authority and the Treasury we ensure departments spend money well. But, Mr. Speaker, can I say that you and I managed together to lay the framework for stopping potentially £20 billion, whatever the ridiculous figure ended up being, on restoration and renewal here, when it all got completely out of control. It is so important that all public expenditure is kept under control, and we all have a duty to share in that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, crikey, this government has a track record of waste and siphoning off public money through contracts to friends and donors of the Tory party. The procurement bill is an opportunity to end this reckless approach by making a cast-iron commitment to maximise the value of every pound of taxpayers' money spent. So, Mr. Speaker, what is value for money under a Tory government? Is it an excuse to slash services and leave an open goal for their dodgy mates to profit at the public's expense? Or will they take a page out of Labour's plan to buy, make and sell in Britain that will distribute economic, social and environmental value across the country by boosting British businesses?
Just for the record, it's easier if I call you because I was actually calling Patricia Gibson and some... Don't worry, it's fine now. I'll come back round to it in a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And once again, we have the Socialists calling for two different things, contradictorily within the same question. So first of all, we should be focusing on value for money. Yes, I absolutely agree. And then we should put in all the hobby horses of the left into the procurement process. We want value for money, and that is what is being done in the other place, and it will come to this House in due course.
Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was down for a topical question, but I was compelled to get to my feet listening to the alternative universe being played out in this chamber about taking care of taxpayers' money. The Public Accounts Committee described the UK Government's procurement of £4 billion of unusable PPE during the pandemic, which has had to be burned. The result of, and I quote, a haphazard purchasing strategy. So, governing is all about responsibility, and we know how much the front bench and the Treasury bench cares about looking after taxpayers' money. So will the Minister explain, or the Secretary of State explain, who he thinks should be held accountable and responsible for this haphazard purchasing strategy, which has seen £4 billion go up in smoke?
They all blame socialisms or communisms or whatever.
Mr. Speaker, you're right, I've got the point, and it's a terribly bogus point, that all the other side were calling for PPE to be delivered yesterday at the height of the pandemic, and the government went from under 1% of PPE being domestically produced from, I think, nearly 80%.
Yeah, exactly. That face just tells its own story, doesn't it?
Being domestically produced, excluding gloves. And the Honourable Lady talks as if the SNP, our separatist friends, are any good at this. May I say to her, ferries,
exactly.
one of the biggest, most scandalous wastes of money, and it was done by the SNP. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Spending Review 2021 placed renewed emphasis on ensuring that every pound of taxpayers' money is spent well and focused on the areas that make the most difference to people's daily lives. At the Spring Statement 2022, Her Majesty's Government also set out plans to ensure departments are delivering the highest quality services at the best value.
Do you want to know? Liz Twist.
Mr. Speaker, can the Minister explain to the House why the principle of value for money, public good, transparency, integrity, fair treatment of suppliers and non-discrimination are not on the face of the procurement bill as proposed in the Government's White Paper?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, value for money is on the face of the bill. It is a crucial part of what will be going on, and it will be issued alongside, when the bill has completed its passage, principles of procurement that will be there for government bodies to follow. So it's ensuring that value for money is put front and centre, which, it has to be said, was the essence of her question. What are we doing to ensure value for money? And then when we do something to ensure value for money, the Honourable Lady doesn't like it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The procurement bill is undertaking scrutiny in the other place. One of the issues about this is how we ensure that new small businesses get the opportunity to bid for government business, get contracts and demonstrate value for money. What measures is my right honourable friend going to make sure that actually we do that?
Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to my honourable friend because this is a key part of the procurement bill. It is simplifying the system so that instead of 350 pieces of EU law and 4 different regimes, there will be one UK law and one regime. There will be a pipeline that makes it known to small businesses when contracts are becoming available, giving them a better chance to get involved. Payment terms for small businesses will be improved. So many things in the bill will be specifically designed to help SMEs.
Ray Morris.
Thank you. Clearly this government can't organise the processing of passports or driving licences on time. There are repeated errors issuing visas to the correct location. Ambulances are stacked outside of A&E units. NHS dentist appointments are as rare as hen's teeth. And now the Minister wants to close the CMWP office in my constituency. Can the Cabinet Ministers join the dots? And can they recognise cutting and undermining jobs in the public service is not the answer?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the reason that some DWP offices are not going to be needed is because unemployment did not rise in the way anticipated, and we have the lowest level of unemployment in this country since 1974 and the highest number of people in payroll work. And it is only right that the estate of DWP meets the requirements of DWP. But you get huge efficiencies by implementing technology better. That has become clear in many government activities. And the Labour Party always want to keep people on the payroll, and then they don't want them going on to work. They either want to be in the picket lines helping them strike, or they want to have them working at home.
Who's not on the picket line? David Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The 2 local authorities that serve my constituents, Hillingdon and Harrow, have shared with me how they quantify the savings from efficiency programmes, which helps to mitigate my constituents' council tax and also reinvest in frontline services. So can my right honourable friend share with me what approach central government is taking to demonstrate how savings from efficiency are helping to keep taxes down and focus money on the front line?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is, again, a very important point to raise. The central government, the Cabinet Office's Crown Commercial Service, is saving into the billions of pounds across government, which is money that is then available for departments, it saves them budgets, ensures more efficient procurement. We're also cracking down on fraud. I'm looking forward to the launch of the Public Sector Fraud Authority, which hopes to be able to save £180 million in the first year of its operation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the VIP lane for PPE procurement and the unlawful activities associated with this was one of the early scandals of this government. But both the Serious Fraud Office and the National Crime Agency are unable to adequately investigate reports of potential government procurement fraud. So will the procurement bill establish a corrupt practices investigation unit to help investigate potential frauds associated with public procurement?
Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, the Public Sector Fraud Authority is going to be announced shortly. But I think this attack on PPE is simply misplaced. That the fact is that everybody in the country was calling for PPE. There was in the world, as my right honourable friend helpfully points out, that there was a dire and urgent need. And what was done was that contracts were issued quickly to build up supplies, and there was not ministerial involvement in the award of contracts. 19.8 billion pieces of PPE were delivered. This was a successful effort to meet a dire need, and the socialist opposite would have dithered and delayed.
There you go. The embarrassment is so strong with this complete, incompetent, lying, self-entitled turd. The mess this extreme Brexit Tory government has caused is nothing to do with this collection of eaten mess, but something to do with communisms or socialisms or them nationalists over there north of the border. What an idiot. This man's just an arrogant, vile individual to me. Now, I used to call him the Haunted Wardrobe or the Mewling Pencil or the Ghost of Christmas Past, just for entertainment value, but I'm hard now because I just think he's a very dangerous individual, and I think he uses all of that to his advantage to paint himself as this rather misunderstood individual with a posh accent. I certainly don't. Do you agree? Right. I shall leave the video here, and until the next time I shall bid you farewell and take care.